Yeah, I got this. Yeah, kia ora tātai. Kia ora Tyrone. Just noticed you come through the door last. Ko tēnei te mihi tuatahi ki tō tātou matu I te rangi. Kei a e te timatanga me te whakamutunga o ngā mea katoa nō reire e pā. Ke mai mahara ki a rātou I wehi atu ki te pō o ia waka o ia marae. O ngā marae maha nō reira ki a rātou mā haere atu rā. Haere ki tuatarai o te kāinga tūturu o te tangata katoa ki reira ki a rātou mā e moi, e oki. I te mamai o te wā ki a Auntie Sal. E moi mai rā ki raro I te maru o te puho tamatia pōkai whenua. I te taua e haere atu ki tō waka marino kei tuatarai. I runga I te moana Whakaraupo, nō reira I te taua, ngā taua, haere atu rā. Huri no tātou ki a tātou I ka kanoi ora ki a koutou, I tai mai wā, I raro I te maru o tēnei whare, o Saviours. I te rakatere he no mai nei ki a koe John, o te manaaki I te tangata o Whakaraupo, o a hene hau, nō reira I te mano o te whare, nō reira he mihi atu ki a koe te rakatere. Huri no, ki a koe he whai Ruth. Nā mihi atu ki a koe. Mō tō āhua, mō tō mahi, I te paramata, me te community nō reira. Welcome, Ruth. Welcome once again. He huri no, ki a koe he tāmā. Te kai whakaori o te iwi, nā mana o kaitahu, o kai kaura, o rere kohu, mai, I noho mai nei I te whakapapa I runga I te whenua Rapaki, o te raki whakaputa nō reira tēnā koe, tēnā koe. Huri no ki a koe Uncle Henry. I mihi atu ki tō haerenga ki a Tahiti, te mana o Melville, o Bill Gillies, I rotua ki tō ope, ka haere atu nō reira ki a koe I te whanauka, I te tuakana o te whānau, tēnā koe. Nō reira, kei wainga nui e tātou, o ngā waka o ngā haue whā from the four winds that we've all come from today. Welcome to this sacred space. Let us pray. Lord, you have made each and every one of us in your own image. Your Father built the rivers, your Father built the oceans, your Father built the land, and he said it was good. Lord, bring peace upon us today as we talk about Awaparahi, our moana, our ecosystem, our food basket. Lord, be with us today so we can share our thoughts and our feelings in the sacred place. And in your Son's name, Lord Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. He honore, he korori amangaro ki te whenua, whakaro mahi e ki ngā tangata katoa. Aki, Ami, te atu te peringa tōku orana, tōku. Nō reira kia tau te rangi Māori e raro i te mātua tama o Wairua tapu, me ngā hira pono kei Wanganui a tātou. Nō reira āpiti hono tātai hono ki te hunga mati ki a rātou, haere āpiti hono tātai hono ki te hunga ora kei Wanganui a tātou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa.
Lots of cameras, more cameras in a Taylor Swift photo shoot. If you don't want to be in it, just let us know afterwards and we'll edit you out. There would be other announcements like earthquake, toilets and such, but I just want to make an announcement about this space. And while it is a public meeting and a chance for the Rapaki Tanata Tiaki Leadership Group to express their concerns and consternation over the reclamation at Te Awaparahi, our meeting is also in a particular place. It's a sacred place, a holy place, and it's a tapu place. Now, traditionally, churches have been places of sanctuary, a place of protection, where we can flee to from being persecuted by those who don't agree with us. The violence of the sword and the words are left at the door. And those that seek refuge here are treated with respect, and they are free to tell their story. And so I'd ask that we too would respect this tradition, and that we do not interrupt the speakers, nor shout people down if we don't agree with them, nor call them names, and especially not to use the Lord's name in vain. Because in this place all is special, for we are all the creations of the divine, the children of God. There are no fools here, no idiots, no woke, no wallies. If you want to talk like that, maybe join one of the local Littleton Facebook groups. And yes, there are toilets, and there's a toilet at the back of the church, and that's where you can find it. And so just as we begin, Māori's begun with the lovely Karakia, I'll just read a passage of scripture written over 3,000 years ago, the Psalm of David, Psalm 8. God, brilliant Lord, look up at your macro skies, dark and enormous, your handmade sky jewelry, moon and stars mounted in their settings. Then I look at my macro self and wonder, why do you bother with us? Why take a second look our way? Yet you have narrowly missed, yet we've so narrowly missed being God's, bright with Eden's dawn light. You put us in charge of your handicraft world, repeated to us your Genesis charge, made us stewards of sheep and cattle, even animals out in the wild, birds flying and fish swimming, whales singing in the oceans deep. God, brilliant Lord, your name echoes around the world. And I just invite our first speaker. I think that's you, Uncle Henry.
Kia ora. Welcome to you all here today. What a big crowd there, John. I hope you got the plate out ready. My name's Henry Couch. Along with Bill Gillies, we were the first tangatiaki appointed, government and MPO-wise, in 1998. Our role was in the harbour to get it back to what it used to be, the kai moana, the gathering of all kai moana, a clean, safe place to swim in, and a place that our people knew as Whakaraupo. But I really want to stress here that this meeting today is not just about Rapaki, it's for Littleton Harbour, everyone, to get your views, because I know very well that where we're going, it's going to be a long track. The damage that's been caused in this harbour has accelerated in the past several years. This was all over a disaster that took 23 seconds, forcing an act to be put in place allowing dumping of rubbish and rubble into our harbour, known as the 2011 Earthquake Recovery Act that crippled our city. However, people here bent over backwards to help, and especially the Littleton people of the Littleton Harbour, not realising that it had given a company the right to use and abuse and carry on destroying our harbour. I really don't think the government of the day understood that either. Never mind, the repairs have started now, have nearly ended now from the earthquakes, 14 years on. And we have now got another major disaster on our hands happening in the harbour. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to be there for a lifetime. So we need to act. And that is why our group Tangatiaki and our Runinga support this, because we know our part of the harbour is getting damaged, and I also know around the rest of the harbour is suffering as well. So the damage happening, I'll leave that to the scientists and the specialists who have worked with us in, under and around the harbour and can explain a lot more than I can, spending many hours under the water in our harbour, keeping records and reporting back to us over the past 17 or so years. Their knowledge is a must to us. If we go to court or wherever we go, the court will listen to us, but they will definitely hear the scientists. I know the bays around us, as I says, are suffering, and I know that Teddington, Governor's Bay, as far as Charters Bay, and we're starting to cop it back our way with the silting coming again. It's happening, and everyone will get their chance to speak on that. So with that, it's not too late to act now. We must stand up. And I'll say from our people is that people can't see the fish in the water for the money on top of it, with what's been forgetting about the damage that those structures have caused and now creating major problems around the harbour. Another old statement by this guy, I've got to get his name right this time, Winston Churchill. I kept on calling him Peters, but it's not. United we stand, divided we fall. This is about our harbour, playground, our food source, and what we leave, our families, our whānau, our children, in the future. We must stand together. Kia ora.
Tēnā ra koutou nā pōwaitako tō tātou matua tīpuna, e mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. Nuk Korako is my name, and I'm one of the leadership group of the Rapaki Tangatiaki. I'd like to acknowledge again Henry Couch, also Mana Parata, who is here, and an apology from Tasman Gillies, who's still in Tika Maui. I'd also like to acknowledge other speakers that are here today, and particularly Professor Chris Hepburn, who has actually travelled all the way from Dunedin to address this public meeting. Also acknowledge David Bundy, David and Heather Bundy, for being here. I know that you've got to leave very shortly, but hopefully we're going to get to hear some of the historical significance and background that you want to actually present here today. And then also thank you all for giving up your Sunday afternoon to hear some of the real concerns that we have about Whakaraupo, Littleton Harbour. I just want to also say that this Friday, the 18th of April, will mark 8 years since the repeal of the CERA Act 2011. 8 years. And so that is another reason why we decided to have the meeting today, because on Friday it will mark 8 years. The other part of this public meeting is to profile the travesty that is happening in Awaparahi Bay, or some of the older Littleton people will know it as Buckley's Bay. And we're highlighting this because it is the destruction of the ecosystem and species that thrive there through reclamation. Rapaki have been resolute right from the beginning when the reclamations first started in Whakaraupo, Littleton Harbour. It started first with Naval Point, and then it moved to Cash and Key, and then now we have Awaparahi Bay. And what we have found over those years, scientifically as well, is that the reclamation, along with the construction of infrastructure, has actually altered the tidal flows, which acted as a kind of washing machine that took things out and brought things back in to the harbour. That will be explained more with Chris Hepburn. The other thing that I want to just highlight is the fact that we're here today because we have tried to continually engage with the Littleton Port Company. And that has been over a number of years. And so we're at our end's tether now, because what we see is happening is that they have continued to start the next second stage of the reclamation at Awaparahi Bay, 7 hectares rather. And then the other part of that is, in doing that, they will almost completely reclaim Awaparahi Bay, and then they will destroy the kohanga, or the spawning grounds, of all of our mahinga kai in Whakaraupo. And so the Rapaki Tangatiaki, as statute under the South Island fishing laws legislation, part of what we do is to ensure that this fishery is healthy. And at the beginning of this meeting, we heard a small child crying. That is the next generation. Maybe that is a tohu or a signal as to the fact that there will be nothing left for that little child if we don't do something now. So finally, we said, and we're very resolute again, not one more metre. And the reasons for that is very much about the impacts that the port activities already have, not only just Awaparahi Bay, but the whole collective operations of the port company. And please keep in mind, we do completely understand that this is a working port. This is a working port, we know that. But we don't feel the love from the Littleton Port Company, particularly in the support, about the impact that it's having on Whakaraupo, Littleton Harbour. So there are 7 things, but not limited to those 7, that the Rapaki Tangatiaki have always highlighted. One is the current flow disruptions and sedimentation, and this has actually altered the currents and sedimentation caused by the introduction of port structures and reclamation. The second one is the habitat destruction. Reclamation and dredging, nursery habitats and all that has had adverse effects. Invasive species, ships coming in here, and then invasive species have been actually on their hulls and left in Whakaraupo. Contamination, pollutants from industrial runoff, particularly the coal terminal. Restricted access, port structures and legislation hinder access to traditional fishing grounds, particularly for mana whenua. Pollutants that come from the coal stacks that go straight into the harbour. Restricting sustainable fisheries management as well, because we can't be within 200 metres actually of port structures, strategic infrastructure. That is why we're resolute again, and we talk about not one more metre. Kia ora.
It's David Bundy. I live down in Allendale, and I've worked at Littleton here for about 30 years, but I have been retired for some time now from that occupation. I wanted to talk about...
Just come close to your mic, David, because we can't hear you, don't we?
I wanted to talk about the property aspects of this reclamation. What we have in the harbour at the moment is that piece of land is public land. So anybody can sail, swim, fish, or do whatever they want to, same as the rest of the harbour. When the reclamation is complete, that land will be surveyed off and it will be put into private title for the port company. So I see that as an unsatisfactory process. The only other time that can happen is when you use the Public Works Act to acquire a piece of land. The concern I have also is that the port company will need to put a mole out from the new reclamation, because when the ships are moored against the face, there will be the big easterly surge coming in, which makes it very difficult to hold ships at the wharf. And if that is put out, it's not on the plan, I want to point out to everybody, but if there is a mole put out, it is going to affect the flushing of this harbour. And living down the other end at Allendale, just building on what Nuk has said, we see the effects of the harbour. And when the dredging goes on, you can tell soon afterwards, more mud coming up to the head of the harbour. And then when the big dredge comes along, like it did about 5 years ago, the mud went down because it took out 5.5 million cubes. So the effect of maintaining the port channel is quite profound. I'm also personally concerned about the food source in the harbour. Down our way at Allendale, where we live, the food source, I think, has improved, and the ecosystem is bringing us a lot of stingray and rig. The rigs seem to be coming back, but with the fluctuating levels of mud, I can't see how the food source there is going to be sustained. So my main concern is the taking of a piece of public land, putting it into private title. Now, we can't talk to our elected representatives about this because the council own the port company. They know the reclamation is going to increase the value of the port, and so they're not available for any discussion as they normally would be, and I find that very annoying. Heather Bundy and I have had a few run-ins with the port company, and I don't want to overemphasise that, but they are not good neighbours to Lyttelton. And they could be good neighbours to Lyttelton and to property owners nearby, but they simply can't do it. They just don't have the social skills to do it properly, and it would make no difference to their port operation or their profitability if they were good neighbours. I think that's about all I want to say. I'm due at another function, the Torpedo Boat Museum annual barbecue. So I'm going to sign off now and say I hope the rest of the meeting goes well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Before David goes, if someone does have a question for him, you can come up to that mic there. This is going off, by the way, because speakers have 5 minutes, but we'll let you go a little bit longer.
Excuse me, David, what's the status of the access to the old Summer Road?
We probably need to come to that mic there, because we can't hear you otherwise, sorry. And also the people online will be able to hear it. So if you come to that mic. And just say your name, please, if you don't mind. Thanks.
Hi, David Dunlay, and just wondering what would be the status of the access to the old Sumner Road?
Well, the old Sumner Road is in the property of the council. It's not part of the port company estate, although the port company do use it, which they can. And at the moment, it's particularly active while they're doing the reclamation. They've got a number of big dump trucks coming down.
So that would become part of their land?
No. Well, only unless council agrees. Unless council agrees, it will remain with the council.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Firstly, a warm welcome to you all here, and in particular our whānau from Rapaki and our whanaunga tā Mark. Tēnā koe te rangatira. Ko waio, ko te poho tamate te tōku maunga, ko Whakaraupo tōku moana, ko Ngati Wheke tōku Hapu. Ko Mishelle Radford tōku ingoa, ko au te hea mana o te hapu o Ngati Wheke. Kia ora anō. My name is Mishelle Radford and I'm the chair of Te Hapu o Ngati Wheke. Look, I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the unending and amazing work that our Rapaki tangata tiaki have undertaken. They continue this mahi on the shoulders of our tūpuna as kaitiaki. Mahinga kai and the protection of our taiao is always at the heart of all they do for mana whenua, ngai tahu and the community as a whole. Mō tātou a mō kauri a muri ake nei, for us and our children after us. We are well aware of the degradation of our moana, whenua and taiao. The reclamation mahi that has taken place and continues to take place in Whakaraupo has had a significant negative impact on our kaimoana and taonga species. For those of us here that have had the privilege enough to have lived within Whakaraupo, we know firsthand and witnessed the huge decrease of kaimoana in numbers and the quality of our moana. Following our monthly urunanga hui this morning, I am really proud to stand here today with the full support of our kahui kaumātua and as mana whenua to provide our support to this kaupapa. As Nuk mentioned earlier, not one more metre. It is imperative that we act now before it gets to the point of no return. That is a state we never want to leave for our mokopuna. Te Hapu o Ngati Wheke Runanga supports the efforts of our tangata tiaki in their campaign to stop further reclamation of Whakaraupo in the interest of improving the health of Whakaraupo. Te Hapu o Ngati Wheke is also part of the Whakaora Healthy Harbour Partnership, so we have to and must continue to work with all our Whakaora partners, who are Te Runanga o Ngaitahu, Christchurch City Council, Environment Canterbury and Littleton Port Company. And of course our local communities to restore Whakaraupo and the taiao. And the surrounding whenua. So this is about us as mana whenua, mana moana, exercising our tino rangatiratanga, and in particular our kaitiakitanga within our takiwā. Naturally, this includes the support from our wider communities and all of you that are here today, who have shown and given of your time to listen to what is being said here today. So look, this critical kaupapa should not be leveraged for political gain, but be solely focused on the absolute best outcomes on the health and continued sustainability of Whakaraupo. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ko Chris Hepburn tōku ingoa. I'm Professor Chris Hepburn from the University of Otago. I'd like to have some pictures if that's possible, so I don't know if the lights can be dimmed at all so you can see them. But I think the key thing is if you can't see them very well, I hope they'll be available so you can look at them later. I've worked in southern New Zealand since around 1998, and I've worked exclusively from Rakiura in the south, sort of north to here. Key in our work is a program called Titiaki Mahinga Kai, where we work alongside and led by tangatiaki across the Ngāi Tahu Takiwā. You can see some pictures of us there working on a Whakaraupo with the team in Kaiwaka 1, and we're sitting aboard a boat called the Serenity, which is from Jill and Johnny Chambers over in Onuku. So it's a Ngāi Tahu-led sort of into, I guess, Hapu effort for the survey work we were doing. I'd just acknowledge, before I start, Tā Mark, who also operates within a mātaitai up in Kaikoura, Oaru, and also just the foundations of our work, people like Nigel Scott, Tiny Metzger, and other people who have really guided and built this program. So I'd like to really briefly just run through some of the things we do. So really, we do a lot of research, as I say, right across the lower South Island, fisheries, environmental sort of work, West Coast, everywhere you can think of, and we're in water and diving a lot of the time. But most importantly, we teach young people who come to the university to do marine science. Currently, we have around 250 students in our first year marine science courses, and we have 100 graduates who do marine science as well. And a lot of the teaching that I do is on marae. This is at Moiraki, and learning about the leadership of tangatiaki in the conservation of marine resources and putting humans within the picture of conservation. Our work, most recently, we've been working in the harbour here. We did around about 100 hours about a month ago, and the main thing, quite close in the inner harbour, near to here. I'll just show you some photographs from what we're looking at. It's a bit hard to see, but all I'd say is there is a lot of life still in the harbour. There's a lot to build upon, and if this is there can't be 5 minutes. Keep going. Yeah, and it's not all bad news. So there is, the way I kind of look at the world with climate change and all these different things, I look at the next generation. They're better than us, right? I think sometimes Pritchie, I didn't really acknowledge him down there. There's Dr. Daniel Pritchard, who was a key figure in the original Littleton dredging sort of work and sort of stood his ground against a bunch of people who came in from the Littleton Port Company. But I'm getting distracted. They're better than us. I think we're at the bottom of the barrel, I hope. And these concepts like sustainability need to be transferred into rebuild. And this is what I see the opportunity here through the leadership of the people that have done the work. And with Henry here, who's guided us for probably us as scientists, I'd say for the last at least 10, 15 years, getting in behind that effective leadership. Just some more photos. You can't really see this, but hopefully you'll be able to see it. It's beautiful down there.
Just going to suggest we actually smooth the screen slightly so it's not catching the light from the stained glass window. Could you help us?
Do you want to?
We can just tilt it a little bit that way.
It's not the.
I don't think it's going to be much better, but anyway.
It's not the easiest place to take a photograph, but it is. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of mahinga kai and the broader sort of concepts of that. Richie, just keep moving. We have done a range of different survey work. Here's some work that was led by Tasman Gillies. I think I'm not very good with dates. How long ago was that, Richie? 2014-15, where we did a comprehensive survey of mahinga kai and also environmental measures. The key things, as you know, the strong levels of sediment in the water and also on the reef, and strengthening of the amount of sedimentation and turbidity as you move into the inner harbour. We're doing a lot of work around invasive species now. This is the Ngāi Tahu Under Area Control Program, Wakami, the invasive Japanese kelp. We've worked all around the South Island on this, and this is changing the opportunity, the narrative, I guess, from negatives of invasive species that come from port operations ultimately, and then are spread around. Actually trying to develop some business opportunities and also jobs and stuff around the rebuild. Key in these sort of rebuild programs, there is an opportunity in the journey to the rebuild for jobs for people. I see some people here that have worked with us over that time. There is the opportunity for jobs. It's not so much the end point, it's the process, right? Here's a picture of some kelp farming we're doing in Otago Harbour, and I think there is the opportunity for us to perhaps develop some of these structures that replace some of the damaged ecosystems that we've lost. Here's some work with Ben Williams' PhD in the harbour here, where we tried to reseed giant kelp across the harbour. Here's some using tiles. We had a lot of problems with little fish coming and eating the kelp, so it never really grew. When you've got a bit of an imbalanced ecosystem, it's quite hard sometimes. And then we've tried it more recently with ropes, seeding with kelp from the lab. But you can see alongside natural recruitments occurring. So in places where there is water motion, where there's waves, where the sediment doesn't cover the rocks, then kelp can grow. And as Henry will tell us, kelp is key. That's the food, that's the habitat, the forest that fish and power and all these sort of things rely on. If you have a healthy kelp forest, you have a healthy ecosystem. I've been really inspired by seeing the whatakai moana in Rapaki and Henry's efforts alongside other members, and also the support of people like Nigel Scott and Tanya Stevens from the Office of Te Runanga or Ngāi Tahu. This is the future. I think we need to actually think about transitioning into allowing systems like this where we can grow food, build food security, and alongside that we can grow kelp. If you show the next one picture, here's a picture you might be able to see in Otago Harbour near Portobello Marine Lab, where we actually reconstruct some of these ecosystems as we wait for this rebuild. I've worked in this space for 20 years and you don't see many wins, and it's very frustrating because it's such a slow rebuild. And working with people like Henry, the intergenerational view of the people that are here, they'll always be here. They're not going anywhere. It takes the pressure off me. In my lifetime, I might not see perhaps the fruits of my labour, but I think in generations to come. So what I would say is The flourishing, I guess, abundance of that harbour will only come when the environment is improved. And through that, we know that hydrodynamics, water motion, are key in what drives the productivity of kelp, and understanding how the harbour works and then working together to actually have positive action in water, not around a meeting table. Let's get out there and do it and learn through doing. So I'd just say on behalf of the University of Otago and us, we're here to support, and we'll come up here as much as we can. And those hundreds of students, they'll know who Ngāi Tahu is, they'll know what a mātaitai is, they'll know about Mahinga Kai, and eventually they'll be in the government and they'll be making the decisions, and we'll see an entire change in priorities. So I just acknowledge you, Henry, and you just stay strong, keep your work up, and we're there to support you in these efforts. Sorry, I didn't really provide anything conclusive about how sediment moved around the harbour, but ask me some questions about kelp and that'll be all good. Yeah. Kia ora, thank you.
Tēnā tātou. I come from the past. So 15 years ago with the earthquake, I was put on a committee, which was all the mayors of Canterbury region, Environment Canterbury, and that committee eventually became the advisory board to the Minister of CERA, Jerry Brownlee. And I distinctly can remember when the bid came from the port company, because I challenged it. The legislation was about earthquake recovery. It was not about reclamation of land. I heard the stories at the time from the local runanga about the effects and what it would happen to their kohanga, their kai moana, the whole region. But I also heard all of the counter offers coming back from the port company with a little, can I say that some of the statements are pretty naive. You cannot put the amount of rockfill back into the sea at the end here and expect that it will not have a counter action against currents, etc. in this harbour. But all the way through they argued that there would be a negative impact. Well, we're now seeing that impact. I come from Kaikoura. I'm the chairman of Te Korowai o Te Taiomarakura, and I'm also one of the guardians, legislated guardians of Kaikoura. So we had a little thing up in Kaikoura called an earthquake. 450 metres north of where I live is where the first of the uplift starts on the Kaikoura coastline. What does that do for my little community? Because of that uplift, Oaro now has any sea rise channeled directly into Oaro. And we had a paper from ECAN last year stating that by 2080 we can expect to lose up to 30 metres off the frontage of Oaro because of the uplift. This reclamation will have a similar type of effect. It changes all flows in the harbour. It'll change the way that it extracts out the sediment in the bottom. It will affect all of our species. And I just think, to be blunt, it's naive to think that it won't have these detrimental effects. And I will finish again by saying, to me, the whole thing was a land grab by the Littleton Port Company. It had nothing to do with earthquake repairs. It was a reclamation to get more land to add to their infrastructure. So, kia ora tātou.
Kia ora tātou, called Genevieve Robinson aho. Thank you for having me here today to speak on behalf of this incredible moana. During my advocacy spanning more than a decade, threats to our coastal environment have increased. From shipping, fisheries, climate change, biosecurity, land use and sediment, often with minimal management of effects or protection. Today, I'd like to reflect on the past, using both knowledge and research in order to understand our future. Otago University in particular, Professors Sluton and Dawson, have dedicated more than 40 years to Hector's dolphin research. Through their work and of their students, we can better understand the cumulative effects on the species. Once considered the most common of all dolphins, with more than 30,000 individuals swimming between both South and North Islands, the total population size now sits at less than a third. Their groups are now fragmented and isolated. With around 100 hectares dolphins living here in Whakaraupo, up to 20 individuals are here at any one time. This too is their home. And now for the port and its recovery plan. In 2017, Lunison and Dawson assessed the underwater noise levels from pile driving and the potential impacts on endangered hectares dolphins. The research project, right here at Cash and Key. Recordings were made throughout the harbour using several moored and mobile recording systems. In addition, an autonomous system recorded sound over a 1-month period. Ambient noise levels was heavily influenced by human-based activities, such as large and small vessels, shipping, particularly in the low frequency range, as well as natural sources such as wind, and even snapping shrimp could be picked up to the mid to high frequency range. At a range of up to 100 metres, noise levels increased by 45 decibels, exceeding baseline background levels over an area of up to 16.3 square kilometres. The average recorded sound exposure level was 182 decibels. This research identified the sensitivities of an increased sound with dolphin detection rates lower on piling days. Overall, dolphin detection rates took up to 83 hours or 3 days to return to their pre-piling levels. Piling continued for 15 months. Reliant on sound for foraging and sociality, and with such a small home range, it is important to acknowledge past learnings to ascertain appropriateness of any further development. To take more land also takes away habitat of marine species. So let's also remember that in 1988, the Banks Peninsula Marine Mammal Sanctuary was formed, including this harbour. Its purpose? To reduce impacts of dolphin deaths in both gill nets and trawl nets. However, although evidence does put fisheries as number one of the greatest risk, we must consider the bigger picture. We must consider all activities together when assessing impacts and granting consents, and whether or not what we are doing today can still be justified. That's all I have to say today.
I'm just going to invite, if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to come to that mic there. And just say who you are and who you're directing the question to. So who you are and who you're directing the question to. Also, if you do have any thoughts, that's fine, but could we just keep them to about a minute, or a minute or two. Generally, I'm the person who does the preaching on a Sunday, so.
Ko CERA Campbell Tine. I guess my question is probably for the Prof, maybe for Mana Whenua as well. I have concerns about the marine ecology in general, but also the cruise ship impacts. I'm concerned about marine discharge from open loop scrubbers and what that's doing to our ecology. I read a report recently that was prepared by NIWA for the Ministry for the Environment. And if I can just read part of the conclusion, it said the risk assessment has identified that open loop scrubber washwater discharges that pose potential risk to marine biota in some ports based on exceedance of either water or sediment quality guidelines. Risks are higher in those ports with low flushing rates and or a greater volume of discharges due to the number and type of vessels. The highest concentrations in water and sediment were predicted to occur in the port of Littleton. Exceeding water and sediment quality guidelines for several contaminants and scenarios, and the largest predicted change in pH was at this location. Excuse me, I'm a bit shaky, I haven't done public speaking in a while. So I'm really concerned. I'm concerned about the impact on the channel as well with these mega cruise ships. They're the worst form of tourism for our climate, and they're low value in comparison. So my question is, what are the studies on, what are your thoughts on the wash water discharge from scrubbers and their impact on the harbour?
Yeah, sorry, there's going to be some science weasel words now. I'm not an expert on local discharges of altering environmental parameters. I would expect that discharges from large cruise ships the impacts would probably be local around the port structures. The main problem I see with from the work that I do around cruise ships and other ships are invasive species and how they're managed, and we don't manage them very well in New Zealand. We have quite strong biosecurity at the border, but then when invasive species like the fanworm that's in this harbour and it's not really being managed particularly well, and Undaria, once they come in, what do we do about them? So I'm not sure about those impacts of discharges. Certainly they would have an impact locally around where it occurred, depending on the volumes. Yeah, yeah. And also, what are they discharging? It could be, if there's any pollutants, heavy metals, things like that could be worth looking at. Yeah. So sorry I couldn't be more specific. I haven't read anything on that lately, but thanks for your question.
Just from the mana whenua perspective as well, as part of one of those 7 things that inhibit our mahinga kai with adverse effects is what you're talking about. So that's all kind of part of what we're doing to try and stop this. Reclamation as well, coming off the coal piles and all this sort of thing. So thanks for your question, but we are working on this. Thank you.
So is there any other questions relating specifically to the reclamation? So.
Kia ora mai tātai, nei te mihi atu ki o koutou, te mana whenua, ngā te wheke mai tahu hoki no reira a tēnā koutou. I'm a Te Arawa boy from a place called Tapuika. The place there that we grew up at is Makatu. It's an estuary, and the river there is Kaituna. We used to swim in it. We used to take kai from both those places. We can't do that now. I've taken my mokopuna back there, and they can't even go in the water. They can't jump off the places that I jumped off, the places where we go to, we collect kaimoana, they can't do. Now, the reason why I'm telling you that is that the responsibility, I've lived here under the korowai of Ngāi Tahu for over 50 years now. I've got mokopuna from other hapu. I think there's a responsibility for all of us, not only you people living here in this, but for us collectively to support something that is altering what used to be and has been taken away from all of us. So, kia koutou, mana whenua, a tēnā koutou kia kaharawa. I've got one question in terms of the kōrero that we have heard. My understanding is that the council has said that they have been working with mana whenua, that they have supported some of the research that I have heard this morning, and I'm getting the feeling that perhaps, we call it a tito. It'll be nice to hear what is in actual fact the position with that, because I heard earlier that the council hasn't been a good neighbour, and I think if that is a bit of porkies coming out, we should know about it.
Gail Gordon, tukunga no Rapaki hau. So I'm on the executive Rapaki, so I'll just say we have arrangements and agreements with the port company. It's one of those things you need to do when you're here forever and they're here for a long time. Thank you. So yes, we do work with them, but we've always been very, very clear right from the beginning when through the earth rate recovery, we didn't have a say, we couldn't do it, didn't go through a consenting process, but we've always made it very clear right from the beginning that while we will work with them to try and get some good outcomes, that we have never been supportive of reclamation. We've always known about the impact that it's having on our kai moana and also on those and of structures in the harbour, even before this reclamation, on the impact of the water process. So yes, we continue in good faith to work with all of our partners who can help us to achieve better outcomes, but we have never been supportive of having these structures in place, and it's a lot to do with sedimentation as well. There are accumulative issues that happen within this harbour, and we try to work with everybody as we can, but we've always maintained our right to say that we're not happy about this and that we would rather that it wasn't happening. And we continue to do that. However, as our Chair Mishelle has said, we kind of feel like we're running out of time. And so we're very supportive of the work that the Rapaki tangatiaki are doing in leading this, because we need to make a difference. We need to make it soon. Kia ora.
Kia ora katoa, ko Brody tuku ingoa, ko Pākehā au, ko tangata tiriti au. Some of my first tupuna to come to Aotearoa settled in Akaroa, and they were a family of one French whaler who jumped ship and was able to escape being taken back and keel-hauled and was able to stay here, and one illiterate Irish girl. He was 20, she was 16, and in their lifetimes they ended up farming along the ridge along the top of the hills in Akaroa, hectares, hundreds of hectares in a very short period of time, while the local runanga were pushed into, smaller and smaller sections of land. I come from privilege. My whānau were privileged to have been able to escape colonialism and escape trauma in their home countries and come here and then commit the same things. What can I be doing and other tangata tiriti who work with this kaupapa to bring on more of those whānau, more Pākehā, more tangata tiriti, to see what needs to be happening because of what we have, it is the wrongs of my tupuna that have led to this, and I am all here for the fight to make those right, but how do we get that across to others? Thank you.
E mihi atu kia koe o tō pātai. Thank you for your question. When we look at the mana whenua, the Papatupa Runanga ancestral communities across the Pātako Rākai Hautu Banks Peninsula, you've identified, your whakapapa from Akaroa. One thing about the Rapaki tangatiaki and others as well is that we have, within Rapaki tangatiaki, we have 14 of our rangatahi actually that are part of this tangatiaki. And that is actually about the succession plan. We actually encourage them, and they do this, diving courses, day skipper, first aid, all of that. And so that is our succession plan. And also they're here today because they need to hear this as well. Now, you actually claim Ngāti Pākehā, e mihi atu. So this is our tangatiaki. We have honorary members actually that are tangata tiriti. And they are in Governor's Bay, they are in Diamond Harbour. And so this is not just about us. It's actually tangatiaki, and what we're trying to do is about the whole community. So you either come to Rapaki and work with our younger ones as well, or you go to Onuku and you talk to them, and that is how you do it. Thank you, because this is what this is about. It's about the next generation and not working in silos. This is about working together as tangata tiriti and mana whenua. Kia ora.
So, kia ora koutou, ko Vicky Southworth toku ingoa. So I'm one of the 2 regional councillors for this constituency. Thank you for organising the panel today. Really interesting to hear some more information. Firstly, just to say from my position, reclamation seems to me such a sanitised term. It's not reclaiming land, isn't reclaiming something with land before. This is taking marine habitat ecosystems and turning into land to store coal, timber, make more space for larger ships and so on. And it will impact, as I understand it, the ongoing dredging will pull up more sediment and create more problems with sedimentation. And yet on the Whakaora Healthy Harbour plan, sediment is absolutely the most critical issue that we have to try to regenerate and create a healthier environment. So it's, having Littleton Port Company in that Whakaora Healthy Harbour group, it's really important. It's a really significant employer here, significant activity that's gone on for a long time, but it seems a little bit disingenuous to be involved in that group and yet not see the significance of this proposal. And to use the Earthquake Act to acquire this, it's not gone through the normal planning consent process. The Earthquake Act essentially pushed economic priorities ahead of cultural and environmental, and it feels really deeply disingenuous to take advantage of that. And particularly as time's gone by, we've become more and more aware of just how significant our environment is, and the fact that coal is something that is, I think, recognised as one of the things that's really driving some of this, which we know is a sunset industry. And yet when this is reclaimed, that's it, it's gone forever, multiple generations. But my question is there only an option here to essentially appeal to the goodwill of the port company to stop this, maybe go through the proper current consent process, which, ideally we'd like to see them stop, but at least go through the right consent process, the one that gives the environment and cultural impacts a fair chance and a fair look. Is that the only process to appeal to goodwill, or is there a legal process that could be used here to change the situation?
Kia ora, Vicky. One of my colleagues here, and also Genevieve Robinson from ECAN, as I'm one of the appointed Ngaitahu councillors on ECAN. So this is kind of, where do we go from here? That's the question. And what the Rapaki tangatiaki are doing is that we're looking at engaging an environmental lawyer. And we've also had offers from lawyers actually to come and assist. So what we're looking at actually, I mean, as well as I do, the Section 35, 128 of the RMA is part of it, but judicial review as well. Because one of the things that over the last 8 years is that the data that has been captured, it's actually now given us a lot more insight into the damage that has been done. And so the use of that data, things, particularly using Otago University, our own Mātauraka Māori knowledge as well. And so what the basis of that could be is that we know more now than what we knew before. And so under judicial review, then we're saying we need to stop this until such time as we actually understand it more. As Mark said in the beginning, it was quite clear then, but unfortunately you have to continue to be able to keep knocking on that door. But now we've knocked so long that we need to break it down and use actual, possibly other implements to get this thing sorted. That's all I can say. So we are definitely looking at that. But we need the help from not just Rapaki, it's the whole of the community.
Just with regards to Vicky's comments, I'm just wondering, considering since mid last year, LPC signed up to nature-related disclosures and also was one of the first signatories to the Nature Champion system. I'm wondering how this might relate to this current project and if anyone may have looked into this, because from where I stand, I think it could be a financial risk for the company to not actually consider in a new frame of mind some of these legal disclosures that they signed last year. So just leave that with the community.
Yeah, thanks very much. I sort of sit and listen to what's going on, and I think back to my fishing days here when we started out, and I'll go back because we're talking about the four people that we have with us. As Nuk says, we have Ross Cornish from Governor's Bay, we have Rex Gibby from Gibby's Pass at Chiddington with us, we have Richie Fisher from Prudo who is with us, and Gary Horan from Littleton. We're all fishermen, and I know that I was speaking with Rex and Ross, and also Richie, and Richie sends his apologies. There was another apology that come through I forgot too, was Robert Duff. I don't know whether you remember Bob Duff, who used to be the All Black captain and played rugby here. Well, his nephew who come over here. He's coming back. He's been in Auckland for 40 years. Decided to move back to the sunshine, and he drove over the Sumner Hill, and he said he nearly cried at what he saw. But going back to the fish was, over the times, I'd say 6-7 years ago, we used to set nets here out. I'd set my net off Rapaki, they'd do theirs. And we used to have a bit of banter about how many you caught. You know, I might have caught 12 and he might have caught 15. So I'd say I had 17 and he'd had 23. But anyway, it was like that. We were catching around about between 12 and 20 flounders in a set each time, the three of us. Now, last year, with what's going on in the harbour, we caught 28 between us. I caught 4, and 4 of those they were eaten out with either lice or crab. It's showing that the food's not there. One of the old stories from our old people, I always keep referring back to them, was that you don't take a baby home unless you can feed it. And we haven't got the feed down there, the seaweed, to feed our fish, so they're not coming. So that's all I can say. It's just thinking back about what we had and what we've got now and where we're suffering to and where we're going. It's become a real battle to stay up there. You feel like you want to argue with everybody. I'm on the MAG committee with Port Company. I'd like to pull out, but I always believe you're better off on the inside to hear what they're doing than sitting outside. So we stay there and listen. But it's a sad situation because really they should be here to stick up for themselves. I believe that. They should have been invited, or they should be, but they would have seen the invitation anyway and could have been here. I was a wee bit disappointed that, what's his name, you invited, not the minister up north, yeah, couldn't be here, who made the decision on that rebuild round there and allowed them to do it. But I think if he'd seen now the actual area it's taken up, it just looks like a big concrete block in our harbour. So with that, I'll leave it to you now. So, thank you very much.
Kia ora, Henry. Look, just sort of final points, final thoughts. First of all, just to acknowledge you all again for coming here and listening to our presentation of not One More Metre, but also I want to acknowledge all the speakers that have come here today as well to really tautoko and give their perspective about the health, the ecosystems of Whakaraupo, Littleton Harbour. It was interesting, a couple of the questions and comments, one by Dave Dunlay originally about the status of the old Sumner Road. And basically what that is too, is that you've got, even though it's a council road, but access is denied to the public because it's actually being used as a source of ballast, actually rock that they're using for the reclamation. So basically it reinforces the fact is that this is not just about reclamation, this is about the commandeering of public land and the access to that public land, in the name or in the interest of economics. That's basically what it is. And so the other part of that, though, is when you look at, try get access onto that road, and it's still a public road, I believe, but you can't actually, and you'll be actually head up for trespassing. So you can see that people that have come here today too, and you're sitting in the audience there as well, is that it's not just about reclamation. It's actually about the industrial creep that's coming into our harbour. And that is actually about also denying access to public land. And David Bundy was quite clear as well, but the other part of it is that the Littleton Port Company has already applied to LINZ for title. So that was without actually talking to mana whenua as well about that. And so what we need to do, we have this public meeting, and I'm sure you're wondering, so where do we go from here? What do we do about this? The first thing is that the leadership group of the Rapaki Tangatiaki have often felt that there is a tactic used here called divide and conquer. And the fact that it's mana whenua, and we seem to be very separated from our own communities within the harbour. That's not Rapaki or mana whenua. That's just a way that you use the divide and conquer tactic. I think out of today, what we should be doing is acknowledging the power actually of the communities. And we should be all working together on this. We've got elected members here. We've got appointed ones as well. But we've also got potential councillors, that are going to put their hand up because this year is local election time. So it's about how do we pull this whole thing together. The other part of it is that it's about the cost actually for environmental lawyers and all of that, but we're going to need to go down that track. I mean, Ngāi Tahu know better than anyone else is that the only way you're going to actually get any positive results on any of this is that we have to go, unfortunately, down that legal pathway. But that's not saying, and we can do that, but all I'm saying, leaving it with you guys, with everyone, is that we should have a small working group, we believe, that actually continues this take, that continues this fight, based on the fact of not one more metre. And you just go up onto the top road, onto the summit road there, and you look over to Awaparahi Bay, and you'll see that things are starting already, if they've started. So on that note, Henry, I think, Mishelle, is there anything else? So thank you again. It's good to see you, Ruth, in your retirement. But thank you for coming today because it means so much to everyone. Tā Mark, kia ora to you. You were very clear on what the Ngāi Tahu stance was and what your stance was, which was us, about reclamation. And also to our two ministers here, thank you for allowing us to use the whare Karakia. What better place is that we can all say we've been to church today, as well as a public meeting.
I wish you'd come this morning.
And also, finally, to our Rapaki runanga te hapo Ngati Wheke Rapaki. Mishelle, Gail, you can see, and our kaumātua here, Auntie Doe, also Ata, and It's nice to see you also. We've got one of all of our young tangatiaki. Some have been here, some have slipped away, but it's good to see that they're here to support us as well. But Rapaki is not divided. Rapaki is within the spirit of kotahitaka. We're all together and we want to move on this, but we want to move with the community as well. Because at the end of the day, we want to have that young one that was here before. We want to ensure there's a legacy for them and their children after them, that there's a fishery still here in Whakaraupo. Kia ora e mihi atu.
I'm just going to ask my colleague Maui to close in prayer. But I just encourage everybody. There was a lot of information today and it will take time to process, and there may be actually thoughts about what can happen or what can be done, and we'd encourage those to be passed on to Nuk and the group there. So that would be great if that conversation continues. I'll tell you what, I've been to a few public meetings in Littleton. This one was pretty tame. But we listened to each other, and that's the most important thing.
Yep, just to reiterate, it's not going to stop here. I mean, we will actually call another public meeting, a little bit further down the line. We need to talk to people now. I see the press is here as well, so the media's here. Kia ora to you, thank you for coming on a Sunday afternoon. And also, we have other media that are either online as well. And thank you to all those that have been on, that are online also, that are watching this. I think Riri Maniapoto said once, "Friend, I will fight you forever, forever." And so that is our message as well. Not just us, but everyone. We need to do something about this. Kia ora.
Thank you everybody for coming today for this important take to our old people who've seen a lot in their lives and about to watch the degradation of our moana out there and the generations to come. To see what. Let us pray. In darkness and in light, in trouble and joy, help us, Heavenly Father, to trust your love, to serve your purpose and to praise your holy name. Nō reira kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou āriki a I hukaraiti. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, ake. Āmeni. Kia ora tātai. Thank you.